Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Grove. I am Bernard Alvarez, and today we are going to be speaking about personal responsibility versus the victim mentality. And I think we all know what we mean by that, what I mean by that. We all have a tendency to shirk responsibility at times, not all the time, not everybody, and as well, when bad things happen to us, sometimes we get a little bit carried away in replaying that story over and over again. That's not to say that something bad that was completely out of control is your responsibility. As a matter of fact, a lot of the traits of people with a victim mentality and the inability to accept personal responsibility usually does stem from some type of trauma. I am one of those people. When I was younger, I blamed everybody else. I had a very difficult time taking responsibility. And as I got older and got more mature, as well as dove into my spiritual and personal development, because of the traumatic situations I had been to, I went through. I jumped to the other extreme of taking responsibility for everything, whether it was my fault or not. And there is a happy medium, and I'm hoping that we can find that happy medium in our discussion today here on the show. So, as usual, before we begin, what I would like to do is read to you a chapter or a passage out of the Book of One. And I picked this one because it does kind of remind us of, we may not be aware of everything that's going on. Sometimes we are not aware of it because we just don't know about it. Sometimes we're not aware of our behavior or the behavior of others because we are in denial of it. And, but that can end. That can end. So I decided that I'm going to read passage number 4 from the Book of One. See it down there? Oop, yeah. Anyway, it's called The Wise Fool. What is a fool? But a wise man who is foolish. What is ugly? But beauty disfigured. A fool does not find or understand his wisdom. Ugliness cannot find beauty within itself. Therefore, to look within is to be wise and beautiful. That's probably one of my favorite passages from my book. Yes, it is available. Please feel free to scan the code, and or you can find it on Amazon. But anyway, enough of that. So let's talk about why I was motivated to do this particular topic. There's always some personal thing going on in my life, which usually gets me interested and riled up or happy and excited about doing a talk on any particular discussion that we do here on the show. And so I'm going to start by telling you all a story. Is my camera like slowly moving? I didn't lock it, so it keeps wanting to move. Okay, I think that should be okay. Um, Anyway, oh wait, before I get started, I just wanted to say that, and I'll say it again at the end, that this might be the last time you see this patch on my eye. Yay! I am going to be having surgery next Monday, so I will not be here for next Tuesday's show. I will be recovering. Hopefully, they say I may not even need glasses after it, so I'm really happy. 6 months of wearing this patch, and I am done with it. So I'm very happy. Monday, I will of course be posting. Please send your energy and support and protection and healing next Monday, the 12th, I believe it is. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I'm like, this might be the last time I wear this thing on my show. So let's get back to personal responsibility versus victimhood. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of the times when I talk about these types of topics, usually self-help or even pagan topics, or something that's motivating me. And this last week, I was put into a situation where actually I'm not taking responsibility by saying that I was put in a situation. But anyway, a situation was thrust upon me without my permission. Let's put it that way. And I had to work with someone. It's doing it again, isn't it? I had to work with someone who, working on a project for something here locally, with someone who was a little bit micromanaging, made it very difficult for me to put my thoughts into the project or to even allow my experience on these types of, I'll just say, events and whatnot, uh, and put in my expertise and my decades of knowledge around this type of work that I was doing with this group. And I was just getting so angry. I was getting so angry. I was getting to the point of like, how dare this person, talk to me this way? And, why are they texting me so much? Why are they calling me so much? When I should have been asking myself, why are they driving me so crazy? I'm going to try to lock this. I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'll just do that. So immediately I went into victim mentality. I was like, oh my God, this person's driving me crazy. I can't take it anymore. Why don't they listen to me when I say this? And you know the frustration that life gives us. Life has great things, it has, annoying things, it has sad things, happy things, whatnot. But as you know, I'm in Al-Anon, so I had to call my sponsor when I get upset about something and I'm kind of getting a lot of anxiety over it. I will kind of hash it out with my sponsor. And she said something to me that she said a year ago to me for the first time. And I'm going to do the first time she said it to me because I thought that was pretty funny. I'm kind of jumping around, but kind of follow along. You'll see where I'm going. The first time she said this to me was about a year or so ago. I had just joined Al-Anon. I had just kicked my best friend out of the home for doing drugs. And I was angry and I was fed up, kind of like I was earlier this week or last week. So they do run parallel. And I was like, and they did this and they said this and they told me I was the reason for this and that. And, trying to blame me for everything and not taking any responsibility for their actions. And I was angry. And my sponsor said to me, what was your role in it? And I was like, oh, well, I just had to sit there and take it. You're like, no, 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 no. What was your role in the interaction or your actions leading up to you feeling this way? And I got pissed off. I was like, well, what do you mean? It's my fault. What did I wasn't a part of this. I'm not the drug addict. I'm not the man that's annoying me on this project. Yes, she said the same thing to me last week too. And I got a kick out of it because while it took me about a day to come around to what she was saying, I was like, well, I didn't have a role in it. She's like, your reaction is a role. Your reaction is your responsibility. And of course, that's something I talk about all the time here on the show or here on my page. And to be put into that predicament in a very anxious scenario where I couldn't think clear, I was letting myself fall into this cycle of poor me, this person's driving me crazy, without realizing at any moment I could have cut it off. At any moment I could have disengaged. At any moment I could have detached from that scenario. And not only that, she took it one step further and said, can you find compassion in your heart for that person? I'm like, no, they don't care what I think. Just being all defensive and whatnot. And like I said, it took me about a day to come around to see what my role was, allowing them to speak to me that way, allowing myself to follow their misguided direction. But also, I realized that I did have compassion for them, or at least I had empathy because it reminded me of me a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I was freshly traumatized over something, or we all have traumas every once in a while, and that PTSD had led me to being very micromanaging and trying to control everything. I was like, oh my God, that's the behavior that this gentleman is thrusting upon me. It's that same micromanagement, controlling attitude that I used to have. And so that made me think, I'm like, how many of us sit with these kinds of situations and can get out of that poor me mentality? How many of us are stuck in that poor me mentality? And how many of us have the ability to take responsibility for our part in all that goes on in our life? Let me do a little disclaimer here saying that most people that are in victim mentality, again, that usually does stem from some form of trauma. And of course, the trauma is not their fault. But I believe once we are aware of what's happening, we need to take responsibility and do our best to heal ourselves, no matter whether it be through, I don't know, spiritual work, therapy, medication, whatever it is to lead us to moving through that victim mentality and moving into a place of healing so that we can become more self-aware and live a much more happier life, by all means. I had a very dear friend of mine in South Florida who had been in a car accident, and they were having a lot of medical issues because of it. And as you know, it seemed like they had just given up after that. That they didn't want their life to get better. They did have that poor me mentality, and it was very draining for me to be around them. And while I had compassion for what they were going through, it just got very tiring and exhausting to hear that same story over and over again of the poor me, look what happened to me, I'm not worthy, etc., etc. And I know I have my moments, I'm sure you have your moments, and that's okay. The secret is to be able to move past it. As we say, you're never going to get over it until you work through it. So this kind of overlaps from mental health to spiritual work. I think they kind of go hand in hand. I do know they go hand in hand. So I thought we'd cover a little bit about what is that victimhood mentality. And I just noticed out of the quarter of my eye that Agni Element Creation is saying hi from YouTube. Hello. It's very good to see you. Thank you for being here. But so I took down some notes, and let's start with we're going to reverse it. Instead of personal responsibility, we're going to start with what is the victim mentality. And maybe, if you're honest, kind of just like see where you kind of land on it. Are you doing it too much? Are you doing it a little bit? This is not about other people in your life. For me, this is about me and my path and how I overcame it. And I hope that you will find this and approach this particular talk of your life and how you can approach it and perhaps see any warning signs that you might have. So the victim mentality is when someone feels that bad things keep happening to them no matter what. At the root of this mentality is that none of these circumstances or situations are their fault. A good example of that is I have an acquaintance of mine. They're not my friend, but somebody who I know from a friend that keeps getting pulled over for a broken headlight or speeding or something like that. And they're like, oh my god, these cops are after me, they're always after me, they're picking on me. I'm like, dude, you're going 70 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. Dude, your car is falling apart, your light is broken, of course they're going to pull you over. It's kind of like this person was asking for it, but they did not see their role in and why that this kept happening. Again, not wanting to admit that the circumstances that were brought on or the situations were brought on were actually their fault. Many people who have victim mentality don't want to take responsibility. A good example, something to keep an eye out for, is saying to yourself, bad things just happen to me no matter what I do. There's nothing I can do. It's always something bad. Another one is Bad things are other people's fault. It's nothing that I did. They're the reason why I don't have money. They're the reason why my house is a mess. They're the reason why I don't have a job, or they're the reason why this keeps happening to me, etc., etc. And the other one is that they don't want to change anything. That there's no point in trying. Why bother? Why bother? Life's gonna be miserable. I might as well just be miserable and get used to it. That is three key points of the victim mentality. So I wanted to share with you some of the signs that might want to look out for in yourself. This is something that many of us do and have done. I've done it in the past when I was in my 20s, when I was the perpetual victim. In my 20s, I truly was a victim of myself. But this one was really stuck with me. Constantly putting themselves down, even if they say they're joking. Uh, you don't look forward to anything about the future, nothing to look forward to. Being angry or resentful of others' good fortune. Like, how dare they? How dare they be better off than me? How dare they be happier than me? P.S. 9 times out of 10, they're not happier than you. They just fake it. We all have problems. We all have problems. Uh, if you tell the same negative story over and over again, this is kind of a point of contention for me, because one of my common themes you'll hear in most of my talks is to rewrite our story, that we must write a new story and stop identifying with the story that we have in our head about ourselves and our lives. We all have it. I have a story. You have a story. You're like, hey, who are you? Tell me a little bit about yourself. You've got this story back there all queued up and ready to go. And a lot of people, that story is very negative, and just they keep identifying with it, and they tell it over and over again. Oh, and I was in a car accident and I broke a disc and my hip was never the same, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I almost died 3 times in 2016. Most of you who've been following me for years know the really difficult stuff I went through, and I couldn't wait to shake off that story. The moment I got healthy, it's like, I never want to talk about this again. Once in a while, very rarely, I'll bring it up. But I don't know if you'll remember when my appendix burst. I was in the hospital and on and off for a year. Anyway, again, ain't my story. It's my past. um, Another thing to keep an eye out for is minimizing positive events that happen to you or others, or having self pity and a strong sense of entitlement. Well, I deserve to have a nice car. Well, I deserve to be happy. Poor me. I'm not happy. Not me. I'm acting. Being overly defensive. Being very sensitive to criticism. This was something that up to a few years ago, I did have a problem with that, I will admit. Lacking empathy for other people's problems. It's like, well, that's not my problem. I got my own problems. That's lacking empathy for other people's problems. Being overly concerned about keeping score or fairness. Well, I did that for you. Now you need to do something for me. Very kind of petty, very kind of petty mentality. Always has a reason why a proposed solution would, oh, that's never going to work. Oh, but, and I'm one of these people where I always want to help people. I'm like, well, look, how about if we do this and we do that? And I know that's not going to work. Nothing's going to work. I'm just stuck living like this, and also being preoccupied with past traumas. Again, most of this stuff does come from trauma. If you do feel, I'm going to do the whole, this is it was Mental Health Month in May. So let me just say this. If you feel that you are a victim of some type of trauma, it is your responsibility and nobody else's to go get help. It is nobody else's fault. If you are constantly reliving and being negative and pushing other people away, it's not their fault. I understand that, a lot of us, especially now in 2023, after the pandemic and the way the world is and the politics of the world, a lot of us have been a little bit traumatized, as well as any personal traumas we may have had, like a car accident or a job loss or a divorce or, you know, an alcoholic family that I grew up with, things like that. But once we're aware of the trauma, it is up to us to get the help needed. It doesn't matter whether you want to, if you don't like big pharma, if you don't like the mental health world, you know, professionals, find another way. There are other ways to handle it. Don't be a victim of your trauma. Do the work. Do the work. Um, Believes that everyone else has it easier than they do, which of course we all know is a lie. Uh, Being extremely risk averse, doesn't want to take any risks, obsessing over negative situations, seemingly uninterested in solving them. Again, we were talking about that. Never accepts personal responsibility or criticism, quick to judge other people, seeing them as either friends or enemies, that black and white thing, which is why I have a big issue with today's American political climate. There is no us and them, there's a we, and there are jerks on both sides. It's not all or nothing mentality. There are shades of gray in everything. Uh, and then, you know, again, it's hard to kind of sympathize for people who think like this constantly. We kind of like, oh my God, I can't be around her. She's driving me crazy. But uh, if you find yourself being one of those people, being around one of those people, have a little bit of empathy for them and know that it does come from a place of trauma that may or may not have been their fault. Actually, I would say 99% of the time, trauma is not that person's fault, but staying in it and ruminating and not doing anything about it, that lack of action is their responsibility. So that part's not yours. You can detach from that. You can, what they we call in Al-Anon, loving detachment. I love you, but I cannot be a part of this. So let's jump over to personal responsibility. Let's get to the happy part. Well, I don't know. It might not be happy if you don't want to do personal responsibility. But personal responsibility is the amount of energy and commitment you have to creating and attaining goals for yourself. It means that you accept complete responsibility for your behavior. Personal responsibility is when you take full accountability for your actions, decisions, and thoughts, and even more. Um, this is the part where spirituality comes in. One of my greatest shortcomings in my own spirituality, and something that is my goal, is to be able, I don't want to say to control my thoughts, you know, as someone who does have PTSD, but someone who can meditate pretty easily. You know, I'm waiting for those benefits of not allowing those anxious or anxiety attack thoughts to start coming in, or those PTSD thoughts to come in that kind of have me reliving the same thing over and over again in my mind, feeling it like it's just happened. So that is my goal. I want to be able to change that. So I eventually we are responsible for our thoughts, unless you are dealing with some kind of mental health illness, like PTSD or an anxiety disorder. Once you go down that path, you're spinning, you're completely out of control, and completely. I have complete empathy for that. However, we do have a choice of what we focus our attention on when we're not in that state of anxiety and racing thoughts and whatnot. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about hurting other people? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about how awful the world is and how awful people are? You have responsibility for those thoughts. A lot of times they're just um, habits, which we can break. If you look at neuroplasticity, it's a wonderful study or a method that we can create new neural pathways and kind of stop that negative rhetoric that we do about, especially the outside world. So think about that. Taking accountability for our actions, it means exactly that. If I if I say something that hurts your feelings, whether I believe, and this kind of falls into that harm none, do what thou wilt type thing. Whereas harm is not what I consider harm, but what the other person considers harm. Uh, and I won't go into the black and white of that, but however, or the gray areas of that. However, if I do something that upsets you, I just need to acknowledge and say, you know what? I didn't mean to upset you. I apologize. Instead of going, oh well, you're too sensitive. You did it. Some people get angry. Right now, we're dealing with, like non-binary or trans people getting angry for being misgendered. That's a big deal for them. It has nothing to do with politics or the Democrats or society. It's for them. It's you're attacking their identity. You're attacking their self awareness of who they are. And whether you think it's a big deal or not, it's a big deal to them. Just say you're sorry and move on. That's all. Same thing goes for anything. When people do it to you, um, you have the right to be angry when your feelings are hurt, and hopefully they will take responsibility for that. As well, our actions, by all means. For me, violence is completely unacceptable. For me, taking advantage of people financially is completely unacceptable. And there are times where perhaps maybe I have done something unwittingly to harm someone. Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good time, a good example of that. I'll make one up. Let's say, for example, a client double booked and paid me twice for a session. I'm just coming up with an example out of my head, and I didn't notice it. And it maybe because I'm so busy, it took me a month to get to it and actually reverse that second payment or something. Of course, I'm going to feel horrible because I missed it. And of course, I'm going to do the right thing and follow through and, refund that extra session that they didn't have. But in the meantime, I need to take responsibility for being too busy, for not checking their email, knowing that I had a client booked for that particular day. I should have checked and noticed that client was booked back to back on the same day, and something gone, something's wrong here. So 9 times out of 10, we are kind of aware when we've done something to harm somebody else. But it's important that we take responsibility. Um, and I'm taking responsibility for saying too much. I was trained never to say back in my public speaking training days. Anyway, I think the most important thing about self responsibility and taking self accountability is that it is a part of your spiritual growth, in the sense it shows that you are self aware. It leads up to that self awareness. So, by all means, be self accountable. Uh, there's, I say this a lot. I use it. I judge people for one thing. I mean, of course, hurting people is another thing. But one of the things that I do say I judge people for, there aren't many. There aren't many. As long as if they're not harming anybody, they can do whatever they want. But when it comes to their interaction with me, I do get a little crazed about integrity. And for me, integrity means following through on what you say you're going to do. And the same thing for me. I hold myself to that standard. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I can't, I will do everything I can to do it. But if I can, I will take responsibility and say, look, I'm really sorry. I'm not able to do this today. Being responsible is more than being held accountable. It is about your spiritual growth. And you will, one of the things I love about personal accountability and personal responsibility is that it's giving you back control of your life. You're no longer cowering, afraid that you harm somebody. If you think you harm somebody, take responsibility and say, "Oh my goodness, was that wrong? Should I not have done that? I'm so sorry." You know, a few weeks ago, I had a little brush up with an organization that I work with, and I kind of took it very personally, and I kind of went off on them a little bit. Uh, what do you mean a little bit? I did go off on them. How dare you? You know, the whole how dare you. I did one of those trauma responses. And I did the whole thing. And, the next day I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? I need to take responsibility for that. They didn't deserve that. Not in the way that I berated them. I won't say berated, but passively, it was a passive aggressive scenario that I was doing. And I held myself up and I said, listen, I'm not happy with what you did, but I will say that my behavior was completely unacceptable. It's fair to say that it probably was a trauma response, and I promise I will do my best not to allow that happen again in the future. And just, accept what's coming to you. And quite honestly, after I did that, guess what? They apologized to me. They were like, you know what? That was completely unacceptable. And they apologized for their part in it. So it's a wonderful thing. You kind of get control back. Self-awareness is a part of this, spiritual journey that we're on. Take that personal responsibility. Know and identify. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the talk and say that know what your role is in it. What was your role? If you're having a conflict with a friend or a family member, if you are even having a negative situation, come together at work or a business deal or a project or an organization you work with, things aren't going right, and finally things come to a head. Ask yourself, what was your role in it? I always say, well, cliche, the cliche. There's your story, there's their story, and then there's the truth. And I find that if we look at our role in all of it and take responsibility for our role in all of it, we get a little bit closer to the truth of what really happened. Again, empowering you, again, giving you back control. I hate to use the word control, giving you power back, giving you your power back. Anyway, so I hope this was helpful for you. Um, it was for me. It was for me. This means a lot to me. Personal responsibility is a very big deal. Oh, I have to add that PS. PS. You might get addicted to taking personal responsibility. Be careful. It's all about balance. Once you start taking personal responsibility and start seeing your role in it, there might be a chance that you start taking responsibility for everything that happens. Don't do that to yourself. It's very overwhelming. Know to just take responsibility for what your role was and leave it at that. You are not responsible for another person's behavior. You are not responsible for the earthquake that hit your house or the starving children in Africa or whatever it is. Some things just are not your responsibility. Now, if starving children in Africa are something you really care about, by all means, do what you can to help. For me, my issue is the consciousness of our planet. I'm trying to do my best to elevate it because I feel so much for what we're all going through as members of the human race and citizens of planet Earth. Consciousness does need to be elevated, and enough finger pointing. Is it your fault? Is the question, right? Is it all your fault? No. Did you have a role in it? 98% of the time, probably yes. Unless you were a victim of a violent crime or a victim of a natural disaster, you probably had a role in it. So, with that, I'll leave you to contemplate what we talked about here. I want to say hi to Patrice Mal from YouTube. You are very welcome. It's been my pleasure to share this half hour with all of you. Just a reminder, I will not be here next week. I will be having surgery early next Monday to fix this finally. Very excited about that. So please send your prayer. Please send your Reiki. I will accept all your healing and all your protection. It'll be done on Monday. I'll be bedridden through Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning. So unfortunately, I cannot do a broadcast. Anyway, I love you, friends. Please consider becoming a subscriber, a paid subscriber on my Facebook page, and or a paid subscriber on my YouTube channel. You help me pay for all this fancy stuff that goes on behind me, and I get to simulcast this to like several social media platforms because of your contributions to my work, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I love you, and have a wonderful week. Bye bye.